Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Curot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1976 movie titled All the President's Men. Now, All the President's Men was directed by Alan J. Pakula. It was produced by Walter Kobens, and the script was written by Academy Award winner William Goldman. The score was done by David Shire. This was actually based on a best-selling novel by Washington Post reporters Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. The score was done by David Shire, the cinematography by Gordon Willis, and it was edited by Robert L. Wolfe. And it stars Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman, Academy Award-winning actor Jason Robards, Jack Warden, Hal Holbrook, Martin Balsam, and Academy Award-winning nominating actress Jane Alexander. Based on the best-selling novel from veteran journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, All the President's Men was directed with absolute care by director Alan Pakula, and it was a very intelligent script by William Goldman. This movie sets standards that are almost near impossible. Not only was this multi-dimensional Oscar-winning film exposes the happenings of the Watergate scandal, it also focuses on the goings-on behind the scenes of newspaper writings trying to get that big story in. What made this movie stand out above the rest was that it refrained from falsifying any kind of Hollywood cliches or overly pandering on the two leading performers who were pretty hot at the time, Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford. This is a very conventional film that succeeds in keeping it real to the point that it has to feel like a documentary, which adds tension to every scene that's featured. There was never any doubt that stuff like this couldn't happen because everything felt like it did. I mean, the script was absolutely precise to Woodward and Bernstein's novel, and the accuracy couldn't get any better than this. We could definitely relate to our leading protagonists, even when at times our two reporters are put in precarious situations and just can't seem to get out of it at times. Even during their trials and tribulations, we can reflect upon them as they truly deserve our sympathy the whole way through. Even when the press needed more and more concrete proof that this Watergate scandal is perpetrated by Richard Nixon and this whole burglary is a lot more serious than one could suspect, they kept on persevering till they finally got their big story and their word across that everything they said is accurate. Back in the 1970s, Bob Woodward, played by Robert Redford, he was still a relatively new criminal journalist for the Washington Post, and he was assigned to break into the Watergate office building. Along with veteran reporter Carl Bernstein, played by Dustin Hoffman, his bravado has also seen better days. He's been not particularly on happy terms with the press and has came on many occasions from getting fired. Woodward was, of course, being a raunch conservative and strong with his Republican beliefs. And while Bernstein is very strong about his democratic agenda, leads to the duo to question whether they should work together to finally disclose President Nixon and the Watergate scandal. Through their political beliefs, they got along worse than two roosters in a coop. There were times when they just purely did not seem to get along with each other at first, but then they put aside their opposing differences together to show the world that Richard Nixon was a thief and that he was just trying to get the easy shoo-in so that he could become the next president of the United States. At first, even Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman were not the first choices to play the roles of these two ace reporters, but it was Warner Brothers who recommended Redford to play the part of Woodward due to him being a hot commodity at the time. And while at a New York Knicks game, Redford spotted Hoffman and recommended he'd play the role of Carl Bernstein. But it wasn't just Hoffman and Redford that were like the only major players in this game, not by a long shot. Redford and Hoffman were, of course, backed up by a strong ensemble of very, very talented performers, and even they also had their shining moments too. One of them included Oscar-winning performer Jason Robards, who won Best Supporting Actor. He was very strong in his performance as the managing editor of the Washington Post, Ben Bradley. Jack Warden was also very effective in his performance as newspaper editor Harry M. Rosenfeld, and Martin Balsam as the Post's managing editor Howard Simmons. And also a special nod goes to Jane Alexander, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Even though she was only on for 8 minutes long, her 8 minutes was very effective as a reluctant accountant who managed to somehow leak secrets into the Nixon administration. But the real scene stealer, I think, of all definitely goes to Hal Holbrook. He adds such great mysticism as a shadowy figure who's the source for leaking information, and he goes only by the name Deep Throat. It was only revealed by around 2005 or 2006 that Deep Throat was really actually Assistant FBI Director W. Mark Felt Jr. But back then nobody knew who he was. He kind of kept behind the scenes, and he was only known in the popular media as Deep Throat. And this is quite a heavy initiative at the time, since no one knew anything about this man. It was only later revealed that that everybody knew him as FBI Assistant Director Mark Felt. But it's not just the performances that also add a lot of recommendation why this movie was so special. The technical features and the settings also add merit to this very well executed film, which also included cinematographer Gordon Willis, who creates this stressful atmosphere towards our two disgruntled reporters as they draw nearer to unraveling secrets behind the Watergate scandal. And while production designers George Jenkins and George Gaines, they created a believable newsroom while situating on a Warner soundstage, they also deserve a special commendation for their work, and they rightfully earned their Academy Award for Best Art Direction. And also hats off definitely goes to Alan J. Pakula for his spot-on direction. And it was kind of a shame that that All the President's Men did not win for Best Picture. And I was also quite disappointed that both Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman did not get a Best Actor nomination. They were also snubbed by the awards, the Academy Awards, because they really, really played their hearts out in this. Sure, I know it seems dated the way they looked and the way they dressed, and I'll be honest with you, Dustin Hoffman looked a little bit unorthodox with his frizzy long hair. But that's just nitpicking on my part. I'm not gonna go too much into that. The film looks into the revealing of E. Howard Hunt's phone number as the robbers who tried to break into the National Democratic Committee in possession of the slush funds that was under operation of the Committee to Re-elect the President, better known as CREEP, that funded the political sabotage, and from there Woodward and Bernstein tried to puzzle that link that leads to one H.R. Haldeman, who was the second most important man in the country. And we follow our reporters as they gather one tidbit of information to the next to try to get something out of their stressful investigating. And just when you think that they have sunk to high waters, we just hope that they pull through. And we want them to pull through. We truly, truly care for these characters, and we all hope that they get their big story across. And of course, this big story across led to the official resignation, I should say, of President Richard Milhouse Nixon, and to reveal that he is nothing more than a fraud and a cheater. And of course, if it wasn't for Woodward and Bernstein, the perspective towards American politics would have had a drastic change. But thanks to these two brilliant reporters, they managed to save American politics from corruption and from deceit. If it wasn't for them, it would have been almost a practically unanimous win for Richard Nixon. I mean, yes, Nixon did go on to beat George McGovern and have a second term in office. I don't see what was the need for him to do this corrupt deed. I mean, maybe he wasn't actually the one who did it. I mean, but he was a conspirator behind the Watergate scandal. And it just goes to show you that you can always try to cheat your way to office, but the media will always find ways to get the upper hand. Never underestimate the power of media. Maybe at the time they didn't have the exposure that Nixon had, but sometimes even the smallest people can achieve the biggest deeds. Many people who have pursued their careers in journalism must have seen this movie, but it makes you wonder, how many of these students really understood the complexity of the story? Do we see the painful, restless search for the truth, which can be a very tiring task, and trying to finalize each fact? Or do they only see this movie of two ace journalists who made it big by uncovering one of the biggest scandals in American history, and became famous and successful after that? The Watergate scandal is a primary example of red-handed gotcha style of journalism that still lingers on 41 years later. But Woodward and Bernstein, who are famous for uncovering the Watergate scandal, aren't the kind of journalists who do that kind of work. The whole scandal just fell into the wrong hands at the right time. If I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would definitely give it a 9. I mean, this was a very complex story, and I give hats off to the cast who made the story real, and to the crew who also deserve special merit for their contributions, because this movie is a very important film to watch, and I really, really, really hope that this movie doesn't get overlooked. So I guess this kind of ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. Remember, you can write back to me. Remember, be kind, be courteous. Subscribe to my channel. And I will be back with another movie review. So until next time, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.